Asaph Sheafe's Christmas by Edward Everett Hale. Read in English. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Asaph Sheafe's Christmas by Edward Everett Hale. Asaph had just the Christmas presents he wanted. Wanted is hardly the word. He had not supposed that a boy like him could have such things for his own. His father and mother gave him one present. It was a camera obscura and 30 glass plates all ready to take photographic views. They were made to work by the new dry process, so that without over-nice manipulation of chemicals, Asaph could go where he pleased and make his own photographs. What the children gave him I must not tell, we have so little room. But of all the children in Boston who had their Christmas presents at breakfast, none was better pleased than Asaph as he opened his parcels. It was afterwards that his grief and sorrow came. When his mother's turn came, and she opened the parcels on her table, for in the Sheafe house each of them had a separate present table, after she had passed the little children's, she came to Asaph's present to her. It was in quite a large box, done up in a German newspaper. She opened it carefully, and lifted out a Bohemian coffee pot, which Asaph had bought at the German woman's shop in Shawmut Avenue. Mrs. Sheafe eagerly expressed her delight, and her wonder that Asaph knew she wanted it. But alas, all her love could not hide the fact that the nose of the coffee pot was broken at the end, and what was left was all in splinters. Poor Asaph saw it as soon as she, and the great big tears would come to his manly eyes. He bent his head down on his mother's shoulder, and the hot drops fell on her cheek. She kissed the poor boy, and told him she should never mind. It would pour quite as well, and she should use it every morning. She knew how many months of his allowance had gone for this coffee pot. She remembered how much she had been pleased with Mrs. Henry's, and she praised Asaph for remembering that so well. "This is the joy of the present," she said, "that my boy watches his mother's wishes, and that he thinks of her. A chip more or less off the nose of the coffee pot is nothing." And Asaph would not cheat the others out of their good time, and he pretended to be soothed, but all the same there was a great lump in his throat almost all that day. When the children were going to church, he walked with Isabel, and he told her how it all happened. He would not tell his mother, and he made Isabel promise not to tell. He had spent every cent of his money in buying his presents. He had them all in that big basket which they bought at the pier. He was coming home after dark on foot, because he could not pay his fare in the horse car. All of a sudden, a little German boy with a tall woman by him stopped him, and said, with a very droll accent, which Asaph imitated, "East Canton Street?" and poked out a card, on which was written, "Karl Schoniger, 723 East Canton Street." Well, I was in despair. It was late. I was on Dwight Street, and I led them to Shawmut Avenue, and tried to explain. Bell, they did not know one word of English except East Canton Street. They kept saying East Canton Street as a dog says bow wow. I looked for an officer and could not find one. It snowed harder and harder. I was coward enough to think of shirking. But then I said, lie and cheat on Christmas Eve, that you may lug home your Christmas presents? That is too mean. And I said very loud, "Komm here." I guess that's good German anyway. And I dragged them to their old 723 East Canton Street. It is a mile if it is an inch. I climbed up the snowy steps to read the number, but I slipped as I came down, and knocked my own basket off the step where it stood. That is how Mamma's coffee pot came to be broken, I suppose. But all looked so steady in the basket that I never thought of it then. That's how I came late to supper. But, Bell, don't you ever tell Mamma as long as you live. And Bell never did. She told me. When the Christmas dances were half over, when they had acted Lochnavar and Lord Ullin's daughter, but before they acted Villikins and Johnny the Miller, supper was served in Mrs. Sheafe's dining room. All the best china was out, grandmamma's spode was out, and the silver pitcher the hands gave papa on his 50th birthday, and Mrs. Sheafe's wedding breakfast set, all that was left of it, and Asaph's coffee pot held the place of honour. One wretched bit of broken ware had consented to be cemented in its place, but yet it was but a miserable nose, and the lump came into Asaph's throat again as he looked at it, and he almost wished his mother had put it away, so that he need not hear her tell Uncle Eliakim the hateful story. The lump was in his throat when he went to bed, but he fell asleep soon after. I must confess that there were a few wet spots on his pillow. His last thought was the memory that all his hoarded monthly allowances had gone for the purchase of a broken-nosed pitcher. The two angels who watch his bedside saw this, and one of them said to the other, "Would you not tell him?" But the other said, "Wait a little longer." What the angels would not tell him, I will tell you. For it happened that I was driving round in my sleigh that Christmas night, on the very snow which was falling while Asaph was fumbling up the steps in East Canton Street, and I stopped at a house not far from Boylston Station as you turn into Lamartine Street, and found myself in the midst of the drollest home festivity. The father was sitting with two babies on his knee, the other children were delving in a trunk to find something which would stay in the bottom. The house mother clearly did not know where anything was in the trunk or anywhere else, but a broad grin was on every face, and whatever was said was broken by ejaculations and occasional kisses. At last some lost parcel revealed itself and opened out into some balls for a Christmas tree, which these honest people had brought all the way from Linz on the Danube, quite sure that no such wonders would be known in that far-off America. There are many other tales to be printed in this volume, so that I must not tell you, as I should be glad to do, all the adventures that house mother and her 3 boys and her 2 girls and the twin babies had encountered as they came from Linz to join Hans Bergman, the father of the 7 and the husband of their mother. He had come the year before, they had come now by way of Antwerp, and had landed in Philadelphia. But the Schiller had made so short a run that when they arrived Hans Bergman was not in Philadelphia to meet them. Of course the Frau Bergman should have waited in Philadelphia, as Hans Bergman had bidden her, but on the hint of a voluble woman who spoke pure Bohemian, whom she met on the pier, who knew just where he boarded in New York, she took her charge to New York, to find that he had left that boarding house 3 months before. Still, eager to spend Christmas with him, she had hurried to Boston to ask his uncle where he was. She had arrived in Boston with the snowstorm the day before Christmas itself, having made an accidental detour by Bridgeport and Westfield. Happily for her, the boy Asaph had led her to Uncle Carl's lodgings just as Uncle Carl was leaving them forever on his way to Chicago. Happily for Hans Bergman, Uncle Carl had the wit to pile them all into a carriage and to send them to a friend of his at the Boylston Station, bidding him keep them under lock and key. Then to Hans Bergman Uncle Carl telegraphed, "Find your wife at Burr Street, No. 40, Boylston Station." Then Hans Bergman, who had been bullying every police station in New York to know where his family was, had taken the early train, and had spent his Christmas in plowing through snowdrifts to Boston. And so it was that at 9 on Christmas night I saw the children in a Christmas party, not quite as well arranged, but quite as happy as any I saw that day. And all this came about because a kind Asaph Sheafe forgot himself on Christmas Eve, and showed Frau Bergman the way to East Canton Street. As it happened, I saw the diamond necklace that John Gilder gave his bride that night, but it did not give so much pleasure as Asaph Sheafe's Christmas present to the Bergmans did. and yet he never knew he gave it. End of Asaph Sheafe's Christmas, by Edward Everett Hale. Read by Maria Casper.